The first time I felt truly naked wasn't in front of a mirror, nor in a doctor's office. It was at my husband's funeral, surrounded by 100 people dressed in black, as my daughter-in-law stood up in the middle of the chapel and announced to everyone that I looked cheap. Her voice cut through the solemn silence, like the crack of a whip. "My God, mother-in-law, did you seriously come to your own husband's funeral in that discount dress?" Tiffany's words rang across the marble walls of Riverside Church in Manhattan, slicing through the heavy air of grief. Heads turned instantly, every neck craned to look at me, the grieving widow. Their eyes traveled down my figure, settling on the black dress I had chosen that morning for its simplicity, its quiet dignity. They didn't know it had cost $80,000, hand-sewn pearls and all. They didn't know it was from a line I had personally overseen years ago. They only knew what Tiffany told them. And Tiffany's judgment, apparently, was gospel. Marcus, my son, shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Tiffany, please," he whispered, his voice strained, like someone trying to hold back a breaking dam. "We're saying goodbye to Dad." But Tiffany wasn't finished. "Oh no," the girl had an audience now. "No, Marcus," she continued, projecting her voice louder, like an actress commanding the stage. "Someone has to say it. I work in high-end boutiques. I know quality when I see it. And this," she pointed at my dress with undisguised disdain, "this is a clearance rack special. Your mother has 0 class." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Her friends, Candace and Naomi, nodded like obedient little sheep. A murmur spread through the pews, and suddenly grief was replaced by whispers. "Is that really what she's wearing? Poor Elias, how humiliating. I thought she had more dignity." The weight of their stares pressed against me, suffocating. My hands trembled in my lap, but I forced my face to remain calm, my lips trembling just enough to look fragile. Let them think her words cut me. Let them think I was powerless. "Poor Elias," Tiffany went on, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "He must be turning over in his grave, seeing his widow couldn't even bother to dress decently for his send-off. How humiliating for the entire family." I felt my eyes burn, tears threatening to spill, but not tears of grief. No, these were tears of rage, hot, bitter rage, kept silent behind clenched teeth. This woman, this sales associate who earned a modest base salary, dared to humiliate me on the most painful day of my life. She had no idea that the pink slip sealing her career's end was already signed, sitting in my office drawer. She had no idea that she was mocking not just her mother-in-law but the very woman who owned the brand she worked for. "Just look at her," Tiffany sneered. "She can't even afford a decent dress. Marcus, you really should give your mother some money so she can buy something appropriate." I smiled inwardly. If she only knew my closet held more than 200 couture gowns. If she only knew the dress she mocked was worth more than her car. If she only knew her entire financial future balanced on my pen stroke. But outwardly, I kept my head lowered, allowing my daughter Belle to gently touch my arm. "Mom, don't listen to her," Belle whispered. "She's being cruel." I needed Tiffany to keep digging her own grave. "You know what, Marcus?" Tiffany turned to her husband with a theatrical sigh. "When we have children, I hope they never turn out like your mother, so utterly basic." A few muffled laughs rose from the back pews. Even Candace chimed in. "She's right, Tiff. I work in retail too. That dress couldn't have cost more than $100. If only they knew the mother-of-pearl buttons on my dress alone cost $500 each." "Exactly," Tiffany smirked. "That's why I say she has no class. At the boutique where I work, we cater to sophisticated women, real elegance, not," she waved dismissively at me, "this." My son sat frozen, staring down at the hymnal in his lap, too cowardly to defend me. He had always been too afraid to confront her. That cowardice burned me more than Tiffany's words. "Tiffany, that's enough," Belle finally said firmly. But I shook my head, my voice soft, broken. "Let her speak. She's right. I don't understand these elegant things the way she does." Tiffany's smile widened, triumphant. "At least you admit it." She leaned in, her voice dripping condescension. "It's not your fault you were born without taste, but you could at least try not to embarrass the family in public." Applause, actual applause from her little circle of sycophants. Naomi added, "Poor thing, must be hard not having the resources to dress appropriately." Resources? If only she knew about my real estate holdings, my factories, my accounts with more zeros than days in a year. Precisely, Tiffany said, emboldened. Imagine showing up to your husband's funeral dressed like you're going to Walmart. It's humiliating. The whispers in the chapel grew louder. What a shame. She's always been so plain. How embarrassing. Perfect. The more witnesses, the sweeter the reckoning would be. And those shoes? Tiffany sneered, pointing at my classic black pumps. They look like something from a flea market. Honestly, I'd be ashamed to leave the house like that. Those pumps had cost $12,000. Look, mother-in-law, she said condescendingly, I know you don't have much money, but next time you need to dress for something important, I can lend you something from my wardrobe. I have connections at the best stores. The irony nearly made me laugh aloud. This woman, who worked for me, whose paycheck I personally signed, offering to lend me dresses. That's very kind of you, Tiffany, I said softly, my voice quivering like a woman ashamed. But I wouldn't want to trouble you. It's no trouble, she smirked. It's Christian charity. It's what a decent person would do in my place. Her friends nodded in admiration. You're an angel, Tiff, Candace whispered. Angel? Yes, an angel on the edge of a free fall. The poor thing is so limited, Naomi added. That word limited echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. If they only knew. If they only knew that the woman they mocked for being limited controlled 17 boutiques, 3 textile factories, and a fortune exceeding $100 million. Tiffany spread her arms dramatically, addressing the entire congregation. We can all learn a lesson here, can't we? The importance of education, aspirations, not settling for mediocrity. And the discreet applause that followed told me she had won her audience. She sighed theatrically. Poor Elias, he always worried about his wife. He used to say he didn't know how she'd manage without him. And he was right. But Elias hadn't meant it that way. He had always warned me. Serafina, the day I'm gone, don't let anyone trample you. And here, on the day he was buried, I was trampled. Or at least, they thought I was. I sat still, breathing in the humiliation, letting it sink deep into my bones not as weakness, but as fuel, because humiliation is like gasoline, and I had every intention of striking the match. The funeral ended with Tiffany basking in the glow of her self-righteous cruelty, Marcus silent at her side, and Belle clutching my hand in quiet solidarity. Outside, the autumn air of Manhattan hit my face as mourners offered their condolences, some pitying, some judgmental. I smiled faintly, nodded, accepted their words, let them think me pitiful. When I slid into my modest Honda Civic, a car chosen deliberately to match my facade, I caught Tiffany smirking across the street as she whispered to her friends. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to drive away slowly, carefully, not betraying the storm inside me. Because what Tiffany didn't know was that while she laughed at my supposed poverty, my Bentley, my Mercedes, and my Porsche sat quietly in a private garage uptown. She didn't know that the pumps she called flea market were custom Italian leather. She didn't know that her charity offer was to a woman who had built the very empire that employed her. And she certainly didn't know that her career had ended the moment she opened her mouth at that altar. The night after Elias's funeral, Manhattan moved on as if nothing had happened. Taxis honked, neon signs blinked, and Fifth Avenue buzzed with shoppers who didn't know or care that a man named Elias Coleman had been buried hours earlier. But in my small apartment in Brooklyn, grief was not what filled the air, strategy did. I sat alone, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows against the bookshelf in my living room. To anyone else, it was just that a bookshelf stacked with dusty novels and photo frames of family vacations. But to me, it was a doorway into the truth of who I really was. With a gentle push, the wood panel clicked open, revealing a hidden latch. My fingers trembled, not with weakness but anticipation. I pulled, and the bookshelf slid away, unveiling the room beyond. The smell hit me first: leather, polished wood, the faint metallic tang of locked safes. This was no ordinary apartment study. This was my command center. My empire condensed into one hidden room. Inside, mahogany shelves stretched to the ceiling, crammed with binders labeled contracts, factories, boutiques, and investments. Framed photos of Elias and me opening our first boutique 35 years ago hung beside maps with pushpins marking every store location, and at the center, a massive desk of Italian oak gleamed beneath the lamplight. I stepped in, shutting the door behind me. Here, I was no grieving widow. Here, I was Margaret Coleman, the silent architect of a fashion empire worth over $100 million. And tonight, that empire had a new mission: Tiffany Albright. I sank into the leather chair, pulling a slim binder from the drawer labeled Personnel Files, Boutique Staff. My fingers flipped with practiced precision until I reached the name that mattered. Tiffany Albright, Sales Associate, Level 2, Fifth Avenue Flagship Store. Her file was thick, thicker than it should have been for a woman employed less than 3 years. I opened it and began to read. March 15. Client complaint. Tiffany ignored a customer for 20 minutes because she didn't look like she could afford anything. April 22. Disrespect toward a 60-year-old woman, directing her only to clearance racks without asking preferences. May 8. Security footage. Tiffany on her phone for 2 hours of her shift, multiple customers left unassisted. July 3. Supervisor's note, dismissive and arrogant toward staff, believes herself indispensable. September 10. Warning issued for tardiness. I let out a slow breath. Each report was another nail in her coffin. But it wasn't enough. I reached for another drawer, the financial drawer. Inside were sealed folders prepared by Estelle, my assistant of 20 years, who knew when to collect information without asking why. I unfolded the papers and smiled grimly. Marcus and Tiffany's financial life was as fragile as a glass house. Their rent for a Manhattan apartment was $3,500 a month, more than Tiffany's entire base salary. Their credit card debt exceeded $60,000. A car loan of $22,000 dangled unpaid. Worst of all, they had applied for a mortgage for a $250,000 suburban house using Tiffany's supposed upcoming promotion as collateral. But there was no promotion. There never had been. The irony was delicious. Tiffany, who had mocked me for supposedly being poor, was the one drowning in debt, living a fantasy she couldn't sustain. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her file spread across my desk. She thinks she's untouchable, I murmured aloud. She thinks she's the one with taste, with status, with the upper hand. But what Tiffany didn't understand was that taste and status meant nothing when the ground beneath her was already collapsing. The phone on my desk buzzed softly. Ma'am? It was Estelle, her voice steady as always. Yes, Estelle. I've gathered everything you requested, performance records, security footage, even customer testimonials. It's all ready. Excellent. And the financials? On your desk by morning. Would you like me to prepare the documents for disciplinary action? I tapped my pen against the folder. Prepare them, but don't file them yet. Let her think she's safe a little longer. Let her keep performing. Estelle paused, understanding. You want her to expose herself further. Exactly. The higher she climbs on her imaginary pedestal, the harder the fall will be. When I hung up, I poured myself another glass of Bordeaux. The wine slid down like velvet, rich and commanding. Elias's voice echoed in my head. Margaret, some people confuse kindness with weakness, and when that happens, you must show them the difference. Tiffany had confused them. Tomorrow, she would learn the truth. The next morning, the city roared to life, but my day began not with mourning but with strategy. I slipped into a tailored gray suit, understated, but cut from fabric any fashion expert would recognize as couture. At 9 sharp, Estelle arrived at my door carrying a leather briefcase. She placed it on my desk and opened it like a sacred offering. Everything, she said. Every late arrival, every snide remark to a customer, every second she spent gossiping instead of selling, and the financial report you asked for. I scanned the pages. My smile widened. Not only were Marcus and Tiffany in debt, they had requested a salary advance from the boutique last month. They're balancing their lives on her lies, Estelle said softly. Yes, I murmured, and lies have a way of collapsing under truth. I stood, walking to the window of my hidden study. Below, Brooklyn stretched out, ordinary and unassuming. But uptown, in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue, my empire glittered. Tiffany strutted through those boutiques, thinking she was a queen. She had no idea the throne she sat on was mine. That afternoon, I made a call not to Janice, not to Estelle, but to Diane Parker, the Fifth Avenue manager. Diane, I'll be visiting the store soon, quietly, no announcement. Yes, Mrs. Coleman, Diane replied, using my married name as she always did in professional settings. Is there a specific reason? There is. I need to see one of our employees in action. I could almost hear Diane's nod through the line. Understood. I'll prepare the staff. Discreetly. Not too much preparation. I want to see things as they really are. Yes, ma'am. When I hung up, a current of anticipation shot through me. I would walk into that boutique as the woman Tiffany thought I was the poor widow in a cheap dress. And I would watch her reveal herself, not to me, but to everyone. That evening, Belle called. Mom, are you okay? Her voice trembled with genuine concern. I'm fine, darling. I just can't believe she said those things. At Dad's funeral. Neither can I said quietly. Marcus, he told me Tiffany was offering to lend you her clothes. Her clothes, Mom. Can you imagine? I allowed myself a small chuckle. Yes, I can imagine. And soon, she'll imagine something else entirely, unemployment. Mom, Belle started, but I cut her off. Sweetheart, trust me. I've tolerated her arrogance long enough. It's time she learns what true elegance is. Later that night, I sat once again in my hidden office. The lights dimmed, the city skyline glowing in the distance. On my desk lay Tiffany's file, her entire professional existence contained within a stack of damning reports. Beside it sat a velvet box. I opened it slowly. Inside gleamed a string of Mikimoto pearls, authentic, flawless, worth more than Tiffany's annual salary. Elias had gifted them to me on our 25th anniversary. I lifted them, the pearls cool against my skin. Tiffany thought elegance came from price tags. She thought wealth was about flaunting. She thought cruelty was a sign of superiority. She was about to learn otherwise. The boutique on Fifth Avenue glittered like a temple to excess. Its glass facade gleamed in the October sunlight. Mannequins dressed in satin gowns, standing as silent guardians of a world where beauty cost more than most people's rent. I paused at the door, the reflection of my modest black coat blending in with the crowd outside. To every passerby, I was just another elderly woman, perhaps a grandmother, treating herself to a rare luxury outing. Nobody could see the truth behind the disguise. The truth was this. Every chandelier inside, every polished tile, every silk dress on display belonged to me. I pushed open the glass door. A soft chime rang, delicate but commanding attention. Inside, the boutique buzzed with subdued energy. Customers in tailored suits and chic coats drifted between racks of clothing. Young sales associates, sharp-eyed and polished, moved like dancers, each step rehearsed, each smile calculated. And there she was, Tiffany. She leaned against the glass counter, laughing too loudly at something on her phone. Her uniform was wrinkled, her lipstick too bold, her demeanor careless in a place that demanded grace. A customer waited politely at the counter, ignored, while Tiffany twirled a strand of hair and giggled. My mother-in-law just walked in, she said into her phone, her voice dripping with amusement. Yeah, the poor thing thinks she can shop here. Can you believe it? She laughed. Loudly. The customer waiting raised an eyebrow and walked to another associate. Tiffany didn't notice. I walked closer, my steps steady, controlled. She finally looked up, and for a brief second, her eyes flickered with something like unease. Recognition, maybe. But it vanished quickly, replaced with disdain. Oh, mother-in-law, she said, sliding her phone into her pocket. What are you doing here? I gave her the faintest of smiles. I came to do some shopping. Marcus gave me a little money, and thought you could help me choose something appropriate. Her lips curled into a smirk. The prospect of teaching me how to dress thrilled her. Well, isn't that sweet? She said loudly, enough for others to hear. Don't worry, I'll make sure you don't embarrass yourself again. How much are we working with? Marcus gave me $500. I lied smoothly. She burst out laughing. Oh my God, $500. You can barely afford a pair of earrings with that here. But let's see what we can do with so little. A few customers glanced in our direction. Tiffany loved the attention. She led me toward the accessories section, the least expensive corner of the store. Scarves, belts, trinkets still overpriced, but compared to the gowns, practically crumbs. Here, she said, picking up a scarf. $200, it'll add a touch of class to your style. The scarf was from last year's spring collection. I remembered designing it myself, choosing the silk, approving the shade of blue. To Tiffany, it was just another prop to belittle me. "It's very beautiful," I murmured. "Of course it is. I have a good eye for these things. That's why my bosses are going to promote me. They recognize talent when they see it." Ah, the imaginary promotion again. I let her words hang in the air, resisting the urge to laugh. "Mother-in-law," she said with mock patience, "the key to elegance is knowing your limits. People like you can't wear couture. It would look ridiculous. You need to stay in your lane, simple, cheap, basic." Every word was another stone in the wall she built around herself, a wall I would soon tear down. Just then, Diane Parker approached, her expression calm but firm. "Tiffany," she said, "Miss Coleman is waiting for you in the upstairs office." Tiffany paled slightly. "Miss Coleman? My boss is here?" "Yes. She arrived a few minutes ago. She said it was urgent." I saw panic flash across Tiffany's face. She smoothed her uniform, dabbed at her lipstick, straightened her posture. "But I'm helping my mother-in-law," she protested weakly. "I'll take care of the lady," Diane replied evenly. Tiffany turned to me, irritation creeping back into her tone. "Mother-in-law, I have a very important work matter to attend to. I'll be back in a few minutes to keep helping you." I gave her a gentle smile. "Of course, dear, go. Don't keep your boss waiting." She hurried off, her heels clicking against the marble floor, unaware she was walking straight into the jaws of her downfall. I stayed downstairs, savoring the irony. My gaze wandered to the other associates. Most worked diligently, treating customers with warmth and respect. One in particular caught my attention, a young woman with dark curls and nervous eyes. "Excuse me," I said softly. She turned, startled. "Yes, ma'am?" "What do you think of the service from the young woman who was here a moment ago, the one with the curly hair?" "You mean Tiffany?" The girl hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "She's confident." "Confident?" I prodded. The girl looked down, choosing her words carefully. "It's not my place to say anything about colleagues, but if you'd like, I'd be happy to help you myself." Her diplomacy impressed me. Professional, discreet, loyal. "What's your name?" I asked. Chloe Ramirez. I've been here 6 months." "And do you enjoy it?" "I love it," she said earnestly. "Most of my colleagues are wonderful. They treat every customer the same, no matter how they look. That's what we were taught in training, that true elegance is about respect." My heart swelled. The words were mine, values I had built into the company from the very beginning. And here they were, alive in a young associate who embodied everything Tiffany was not. "You have a wise boss," I said. "I've never met her, but yes, everyone says she built this empire from nothing." I smiled. Yes, she did. Moments later, Tiffany returned, her face clouded with confusion. She looked around, searching. "Mother-in-law, didn't anyone serve you? What terrible service," she snapped, glaring at Chloe. "This young lady was helping me very well," I replied calmly. Tiffany dismissed Chloe with a wave. "Oh, she's new, doesn't know much. I'm the expert here." Chloe retreated, but her eyes met mine briefly. She understood everything without a word. Tiffany leaned close. Strange. My boss wasn't upstairs after all. Probably just wanted to congratulate me about my promotion. She always seeks me out for important things. More lies. More rope for her to hang herself with. "Well," I said softly, "perhaps you should continue helping me." "Of course, but first, let me tell you something. When I get promoted to manager, I'm going to make a lot of changes here, starting with the clientele." "Oh?" I asked. "Yes. We can't just let anyone walk in off the street. It cheapens the store's image. This is Fifth Avenue, not a bargain mart. If someone doesn't belong, I'll politely suggest they shop somewhere more appropriate." "Interesting philosophy," I murmured. "Exactly. My boss will be so proud when she sees how I improve the boutique." She led me to the most exclusive section, gowns priced between $5,000 and $15,000. She picked up one, a champagne-colored dress, hand-embroidered. "This," she said reverently, "is haute couture, real elegance. Not for you, of course." She smirked. "We need to find you something realistic, something that matches your current lifestyle." She guided me toward clearance racks at the back. "Here's something more your price range," she said, holding up a gray dress marked down to $400, perfect for ladies your age. The dress was one I had rejected 3 years ago for not meeting my standards. I touched the fabric. "And what do you think of this dress?" "Honestly, not much. But for someone like you, it's fine. You don't have the figure or presence for the exclusive pieces." Her words pierced, but not because I believed them. They hurt because she represented my company, wearing its name while spitting on its values. "You know what, Tiffany?" I said quietly. "You're right. I don't have the presence for couture." She grinned, triumphant. "Exactly. Finally, some self-awareness. But let me ask you," I continued softly, "what would you do if someone dressed like me turned out to be wealthy? How should you treat them then?" She laughed. "That only happens in movies. Rich people flaunt it. They don't dress like this. If someone looks poor, they are poor. That's how it works." "I see." Her arrogance was staggering, and it was about to destroy her. For a moment, time froze inside the Fifth Avenue boutique. Tiffany's laugh, still lingering from her last cruel remark, died in her throat. Her eyes flicked between Estelle and me, confusion twisting into disbelief. "What?" she stammered, her voice suddenly brittle. "What did you say?" Estelle's tone was calm, almost gentle. "Your mother-in-law is my boss. Mrs. Margaret Coleman is the founder and owner of this entire chain of boutiques." The color drained from Tiffany's face. She clutched the counter, as though the marble itself might keep her upright. "No, that can't be true," she whispered. She drives a Honda Civic. She lives in some tiny apartment. Look at her clothes. There, an $80,000 couture gown." I interrupted softly, my voice cutting through her panic like a blade. "The same one you dismissed as clearance rack. The pumps you called flea market finds? 12,000, custom made. And the pearls you never noticed? Mikimoto." Gasps rippled through the employees gathered nearby. A few customers paused, sensing drama unfolding like an unscripted theater play. Tiffany shook her head violently. No, this is some kind of sick joke." I stepped closer, steady, unflinching. "The only joke here, Tiffany, is that you thought cruelty was a form of sophistication." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like a woman drowning, searching for air. Estelle set a folder on the counter between us. Its edges were crisp, its weight undeniable. "Shall I read the reports, ma'am?" "Please do," I said, never taking my eyes off Tiffany. Estelle flipped open the folder. March 15. Employee ignored a client for 20 minutes, later remarking the woman looked like she couldn't afford anything. April 22. A 60-year-old client was treated with open disdain, directed only to clearance racks. May 8. Employee used personal phone for 2 hours during her shift. Multiple customers left unattended. "Stop," Tiffany cried. Her hands trembled as she reached for the folder, but Estelle slid it back effortlessly. "You can't deny facts," Estelle said evenly. Tiffany's voice broke. I didn't know. If I had known she was..." "Exactly." I cut in, my tone sharper now. "That is the point. You respect only those you think can benefit you. You humiliate anyone who looks beneath you. Tell me, Tiffany, would you have been kind to me at Elias's funeral if you had known who I was?" Her lips trembled, tears welled in her eyes. "I never would have..." "Never would have what?" I pressed, leaning closer. "Never would have shown your true nature? Never would have revealed the shallow cruelty that defines you?" She crumbled, sinking into a chair, sobbing openly now. Employees hovered nearby, some pitying, some satisfied. "Please," she begged. "Please, don't do this. I need this job. Marcus and I, we have debts, bills, a house you plan to buy with a promotion that never existed," Estelle added coolly. Tiffany's head shot up, eyes wide with horror. "How do you know about that?" "Because I know everything about the people who work for me," I replied coldly, "especially when those people are family." Her sobs deepened. "I'll change. I promise. I'll be better. Please, give me one more chance." I straightened, my voice like steel. "You are 32 years old, Tiffany. If you haven't learned to treat people with respect by now, you never will." "But I'm your daughter-in-law," she pleaded. "Exactly," I said, "and that makes your betrayal even more unforgivable." Estelle handed me another folder. Termination documents, neatly prepared, ready for my signature. I slid them toward Tiffany. "Effective immediately." She stared at the papers as though they were a death sentence. "No, you can't. This is personal. This is revenge." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Revenge? No, Tiffany. This is accountability. Cruelty has consequences, whether it's toward a stranger in a store or a mother-in-law at her husband's funeral. Her eyes darted around the boutique, desperate. Someone please, someone speak up for me. Diane? Chloe? Diane stepped forward, her expression grave. Tiffany, I warned you countless times about your attitude with clients. You chose not to listen. Chloe looked away, uncomfortable but resolute. Tiffany's desperation turned to anger. You're all against me. This is a setup, she pointed at me, her finger trembling. You destroyed me. No, Tiffany, I said softly, almost with pity. You destroyed yourself. 2 security guards arrived, summoned discreetly by Estelle. Please escort Miss Albright as she gathers her belongings, I instructed. No, wait, Tiffany screamed, tears streaming down her face. Think about Marcus. If you fire me, you'll ruin our marriage. I met her eyes, unwavering. You ruined your marriage the moment you humiliated his mother at his father's funeral. The guards guided her toward the back, her sobs echoed, her voice breaking as she clutched at the last threads of her pride. This isn't over, she cried. I'll fight this. Then fight, I replied calmly. But know this, I have every report, every video, every word you spoke on record. The truth will always win. She faltered, the fight draining from her as the guards ushered her away. Her final sobs dissolved into silence. The boutique remained hushed. Every employee looked at me, their expressions a mixture of respect, awe, and fear. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Let this be a lesson, I said, my voice carrying across the floor. In my stores, every customer is treated as though they are the most important person in the world, not because of what they wear or what car they drive, but because it is the right thing to do. True elegance is respect. The staff nodded solemnly. Chloe's eyes shone with gratitude. Diane, I added, turning to the manager, document this incident and circulate it to every branch. Let Tiffany's downfall serve as a warning. Yes, ma'am, Diane said firmly. And Chloe, I continued, looking at the young associate, you handled yourself with professionalism today. Consider this the start of your promotion process. Her mouth fell open, stunned. Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. I thank you. I gave her a small smile. Earn it every day. Humility and respect will take you further than arrogance ever could. With that, I gathered the documents, tucked them under my arm, and walked out of the boutique. The October air struck my face like a cleansing wind. Tiffany was gone, justice was served. But the hardest part still lay ahead. That evening, my apartment felt colder than usual. The shadows of Elias's absence pressed heavily against the walls. I poured myself another glass of Bordeaux, but its taste was muted. The phone rang. Marcus. Mom, he said, his voice tight, almost panicked. What happened? Tiffany came home sobbing, saying she was unfairly fired. She said you had something to do with it. Please tell me it isn't true. I closed my eyes. The moment had arrived. Marcus, I said softly, come over tomorrow. There's something I need to show you, something that will change how you see everything. Silence, then a shaky exhale. Mom, Tiffany said, she said, you own the boutique. That's impossible, right? Tomorrow, I repeated. Come at noon, you'll see for yourself. The following afternoon, the Brooklyn air carried the faint chill of late October. Marcus arrived at my apartment precisely at noon as I had asked. His knock on the door was hesitant, unlike the confident raps of his childhood. When I opened it, I barely recognized my son. His eyes were bloodshot, his posture slumped. He looked like a man torn in half. Mom, he said, stepping inside, please tell me Tiffany was exaggerating. Tell me you don't own the boutique. Tell me this isn't true. I gestured for him to sit. Marcus, there are things you don't know, things I've hidden from you and Belle your entire lives. It's time you learned the truth. He dropped onto the sofa, his hands buried in his hair. She came home destroyed, Mom. She said you humiliated her, ruined her career, threw her out like trash. She swore you did it because you hate her. I felt a sharp pang, but kept my voice calm. Marcus, come with me. I led him toward the bookshelf in the living room. With a click, the hidden latch released. Slowly, the shelf swung open, revealing the secret office. Marcus froze. His jaw fell slack as his eyes took in the mahogany desk, the binders, the files, the framed photos of boutiques from coast to coast. What "What is this?" he whispered. "This," I said quietly, "is the empire your father and I built together. 17 boutiques, 3 textile factories, investments worth more than you can imagine. For 40 years, Elias and I kept this secret. We lived simply so you and Belle could grow up with values, not entitlement." Marcus stumbled inside, his eyes darting from one document to another. He picked up a binder labeled Financial Reports 2022. His hands trembled as he flipped through figures that didn't seem real. "Mom." His voice cracked. "You're a millionaire." "Yes," I admitted, "for decades." He staggered back, his expression a storm of betrayal and awe. "All this time, and you let me believe we were normal, that we barely scraped by?" "Because normal was the life you needed," I said firmly. "Your father and I wanted you to know humility, hard work, the value of people, not money." Marcus pressed his palms to his temples. "I don't understand. You could have paid for better schools, better opportunities." "And what would that have taught you?" I interrupted. "That privilege defines worth? That money buys respect?" "No, Marcus. Look at Tiffany. That's what happens when someone grows up believing wealth is identity." Her name hung heavy in the air. Marcus's face twisted with anguish. "Mom, she said you set her up, that you wanted revenge." I walked to the desk, opened a folder, and slid it toward him. "Read." He hesitated, then picked up the first report. His lips moved silently as he read. "Ignoring clients, humiliating older women, gossiping instead of working." Another report. And another, each one darker than the last. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "This can't be Tiffany. She's not." "She is," I said, my voice steady. "And you know it, Marcus. You've seen her belittle waiters. You've watched her laugh at people who had less. You just didn't want to admit it." He slammed the folder shut, his chest heaving. "You should have come to me first. She's my wife. You humiliated her in front of everyone. Do you know what that does to a marriage?" My heart clenched, but I refused to waver. "Do you know what it does to a mother to be humiliated at her husband's funeral, by her own daughter-in-law?" The words struck him like a blow. He flinched, guilt flashing across his face. He faltered. "I thought she was trying to help you." "Help me?" My laugh was sharp, bitter. "By calling me classless? By pointing at my dress and declaring it a disgrace? By turning your father's funeral into a performance?" His shoulders sagged. "I didn't stop her. I should have. God, Mom, I just stood there." "Yes," I said softly. "You did." The silence between us stretched, raw and painful. Finally, Marcus whispered. She told me you ruined us financially, that without her job, we'll lose everything." I picked up another folder and handed it to him. "Your finances. Every debt, every unpaid loan, every false claim she's made. Marcus, Tiffany didn't just ruin herself, she dragged you down with her." He stared at the papers, horror dawning. 60,000 in credit cards, the car loan, the mortgage application. His voice broke. "She lied to me." I laid a hand on his arm. "She didn't just lie, Marcus. She built a marriage on lies. She humiliated me because she thought I was powerless. But the truth has a way of exposing everything." He pulled away, pacing the room like a caged animal. "What do I do? She's my wife. I love her, Mom, but..." He stopped, his voice cracking. "How do I stay with someone who did this to you? How do I walk away from the woman I swore to stand by?" My throat tightened. "That is your decision to make. But know this respect is non-negotiable. If you choose her, you choose a life built on lies. If you choose truth, you may lose her, but you'll gain back yourself." Marcus collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. His sobs echoed in the hidden room, a man unraveling under the weight of loyalty and truth. I wanted to comfort him, but I knew comfort would weaken the lesson. Elias had always said some truths must burn to be remembered. Finally, Marcus lifted his head, his face streaked with tears. "If I leave her, she'll have nothing. She created that fate," I said firmly. "Not you, but she's still my wife." "She was your wife the moment she vowed to honor you and your family," I replied coldly. "And she broke that vow the moment she disgraced me at your father's funeral." The silence afterward was suffocating. Marcus stood abruptly, his fists clenched. "I need to talk to her. Face to face. If she's lied to me, I want to hear it from her lips." "Then do it," I said. But don't go blind, Marcus. Remember what you've seen here today. Don't let her twist it into another story. He nodded stiffly, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused, his voice low. Mom, I don't know if I can forgive you for keeping this empire secret, but I know I'll never forgive myself if I let her destroy you again. I said nothing. His footsteps echoed down the hall, then faded into silence. That night, the apartment was too quiet. The secret office loomed behind the bookshelf like a shadow of choices yet to come. Estelle called. Did he see everything? Yes, I replied. And? He's torn. He loves her, but he knows the truth now. Estelle hesitated. What if he chooses her anyway? I stared out the window at the city lights. Then I'll know the sun I raised is gone. The morning air in Manhattan was sharp, metallic with the bite of autumn. I had barely finished my first cup of coffee when Marcus's words still rang in my ears. She said she's not done. She has one last move, and I think it's against you. Tiffany Albright was many things: vain, cruel, reckless, but she was not stupid. She knew her career in luxury retail was over, her reputation shredded beyond repair. Yet I underestimated her if I thought she would simply fade away. No, Tiffany was desperate, and desperation makes dangerous people. That day, I asked Estelle to dig deeper. By evening, a file landed on my desk, crisp and damning. Her debts have worsened, Estelle said, sliding the folder forward. She missed her car payment. Credit cards are maxed out. She even tried applying for a payday loan yesterday. Denied. I skimmed the report. And Marcus? Estelle hesitated. His name is on half the accounts. If she collapses financially, he collapses too. I pressed my lips together, anger simmering low in my chest. Tiffany's recklessness had shackled my son to her downfall. And there's more, Estelle added. We intercepted a conversation. She's been telling friends she intends to sue you for wrongful termination. Claims you abused your power to settle a personal grudge. I let out a bitter laugh. She has no idea how much evidence I have. Security recordings, client complaints, her own words on the sales floor. She doesn't stand a chance. Maybe, Estelle said softly. But lawsuits aren't always about winning. Sometimes they're about destroying reputations. Her warning lingered long after she left. Meanwhile, Tiffany played her part with twisted precision. Across town, in a dingy apartment she rented after Marcus forced her out of their home, Tiffany sat hunched over her laptop, wine glass in one hand, fury in her eyes. She typed furiously. Wrongfully terminated. Elderly mother-in-law exploiting her position. Revenge disguised as policy. She posted to forums. She called acquaintances in the fashion industry. She whispered poison into the ears of anyone willing to listen. And slowly, the rumors began to spread. Did you hear? That widow on Fifth Avenue used her power to ruin her daughter-in-law. Terrible. Imagine being fired because of family drama. Maybe her success isn't as clean as it looks. The city thrived on gossip, and Tiffany knew it. 2 days later, the first call arrived. Mrs. Coleman? It was a journalist from the Herald. We're running a story on allegations of nepotism and retaliation at your company. Would you like to comment? I hung up without a word, but my pulse quickened. Tiffany was weaving her web, and the press was her loom. That night, Marcus stormed into my apartment, his face pale. Mom, what are you doing to her? He demanded. I stared at him, stunned. Excuse me? She says you're smearing her reputation, that you're telling people lies, trying to destroy her completely. His voice broke. She says you'll stop at nothing until she's on the street. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I placed the evidence folder in his hands. Read it, I said coldly. Every lie she's told, every debt she's hidden, every humiliation she inflicted on others, including me. He opened it reluctantly. With each page, his shoulders sagged. Finally, he whispered, God help me. She's even worse than I thought. I placed a hand on his arm. Marcus, you must decide. Do you want to save a marriage built on lies, or do you want to save yourself? Tears welled in his eyes. I don't know if I can choose. You already have, I said softly. But Tiffany wasn't finished. The following week, she arrived at my corporate headquarters unannounced. Estelle tried to block her, but Tiffany pushed past, her hair disheveled, her eyes blazing. Where is she? She screamed. Where's Margaret Coleman? The lobby froze. Employees stared. Tiffany's voice carried like a siren. I stepped out of the elevator calm as stone. Here I am. Her eyes locked on mine, filled with venom. You think you've won? You humiliated me, destroyed my job, turned my husband against me, but I'm not finished. Leave, I said evenly. She laughed bitterly. Oh, I'll leave. But not before I tell everyone the truth. You're a fraud, a manipulator. You hid your wealth to trick your own children. You fire employees for personal revenge. The world will know what you are. Gasps rippled through the lobby. Cameras flashed. Someone was recording. Tiffany knew exactly what she was doing. I didn't flinch. Instead, I leaned in close enough for only her to hear. Shout as loud as you want. The louder you scream, the faster you'll unravel, because every word you say can be proven false. Her smile faltered, just for a moment, but she masked it quickly, turning to the watching crowd. She pretends to be kind, but she's a tyrant, Tiffany shouted. Ask anyone, ask her own son. Marcus appeared then, as if fate had summoned him. His face was ashen, his eyes torn between two worlds. Tiffany, he said hoarsely. Stop this. She spun on him, her voice trembling. Marcus, don't you see? She's destroying us. She wants me gone because she's jealous. Because I'm younger, prettier, because you chose me. The crowd held its breath. Marcus looked from Tiffany to me, his face twisted in anguish. Then, in a voice broken but resolute, he whispered, You humiliated her at Dad's funeral, and you lied to me. I can't forgive that. Tiffany's scream echoed across the marble lobby. That night, the press had their story. Headlines blazed across social media. Fashion heiress accused of firing daughter-in-law in family feud. Scandal at Coleman boutiques, nepotism or justice. Estelle came into my office with the early reports. It's everywhere, ma'am. Tiffany succeeded in stirring the pot. I closed my eyes, exhaustion pressing on my chest. Let her. The truth will speak louder in the end. But until then, Estelle asked softly. Until then, I whispered, we prepare for war. The courthouse in downtown Manhattan was an old stone building, weathered and imposing, its marble steps worn by decades of battles fought in the name of justice. That morning, its halls echoed with whispers, reporters clustering near the entrance like vultures circling prey. They weren't here for politics or crime, they were here for me and Tiffany. Coleman v. Coleman Enterprises. A daughter-in-law suing her mother-in-law for wrongful termination. The scandal was irresistible. As Estelle and I walked through the lobby, cameras flashed. Voices shouted questions. Mrs. Coleman, did you fire her for personal reasons? Is it true you've been hiding your wealth for decades? Do you manipulate your employees with fear? I said nothing. Silence was armor. Inside the courtroom, Tiffany sat at the plaintiff's table, draped in a tailored suit she could not afford, her hair perfectly styled. To the casual observer, she looked like the picture of dignity, the wronged woman fighting back against injustice. But I saw the cracks, the twitch of her hands, the tightness around her mouth, desperation disguised as poise. Marcus sat behind her, his face pale, his eyes shadowed. He hadn't chosen a side publicly, but his presence was enough to feed the whispers. Will he defend his wife or his mother? I took my seat at the defense table, Estelle at my side, and met Tiffany's gaze. She didn't look away. The judge entered. Court is now in session. Tiffany's lawyer, a sharp young man with slicked back hair, rose first. Your Honor, this case is about abuse of power. My client, Mrs. Tiffany Albright, was unjustly terminated from her position at Coleman Boutiques. She was targeted not for her performance, but because of family disputes. Mrs. Coleman used her influence as owner to destroy Tiffany's career and reputation. We seek damages for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. He gestured toward Tiffany. She lowered her head slightly, dabbing at imaginary tears with a tissue. The courtroom murmured with sympathy. Then my lawyer, a seasoned woman named Eleanor Price, stood. Your Honor, the evidence will show the opposite. Mrs. Albright was not terminated because of family connections, but because of documented misconduct. We have security footage, customer complaints, supervisor reports, and financial records that expose a pattern of arrogance, negligence, and deceit. This case is not about wrongful termination, it is about accountability. Her voice was steady, sharp as glass. And by the end, it will be clear that Mrs. Albright herself manufactured lies to cover her own failures." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The first witness was Diane Parker, the boutique manager. "Miss Parker," Tiffany's lawyer began, "isn't it true Mrs. Albright was considered a strong candidate for promotion?" Diane shook her head. "No. In fact, she was under review for probation. Her attitude toward clients was unacceptable." Tiffany shifted uncomfortably. "Objection," her lawyer snapped. "Speculation. Overruled," the judge said. "Answer stands." Diane continued calmly. "We had multiple complaints. She ignored customers, she judged as poor, mocked clients behind their backs, and wasted hours on her phone. It was damaging our reputation." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Next came Chloe Ramirez, the young associate. She looked nervous but determined as she took the stand. "Chloe, did you witness Mrs. Albright's behavior?" Eleanor asked. "Yes," Chloe said softly. "I saw her ignore an older woman who came in looking for a scarf. She whispered that the lady didn't belong here. I also saw her mock her own mother-in-law in the store, telling her she didn't have the presence to wear couture." The courtroom erupted in gasps. Tiffany's face flushed crimson. "Objection," her lawyer shouted. "Irrelevant." "Overruled," the judge said firmly. "Continue." "She embarrassed Mrs. Coleman in front of staff and customers," Chloe said, her voice steadier now. "It was cruel. It went against everything we were taught." Then came the footage. Security cameras projected Tiffany on the sales floor, phone pressed to her ear, laughing loudly. "My mother-in-law's here," her voice crackled through the speakers. "She thinks she can shop here. Can you believe it? The poor thing looks like she bought her dress at Burlington." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even Marcus buried his face in his hands. Another clip, Tiffany waving off a client. "You probably can't afford this section. Clearance is over there." The judge's face darkened. "Mrs. Albright, do you deny this is you?" Tiffany's voice trembled. "I was joking. Taken out of context." But the damage was irreversible. Finally, Eleanor stood and presented the financial records. "Your Honor, these documents show Mrs. Albright and her husband are drowning in debt, credit cards, car loans, an attempted mortgage application based on a promotion that never existed. Her desperation motivated her to cling to this job at any cost. She is not a victim, she is an architect of her own downfall." She placed the papers on the judge's bench. The defense rests. The courtroom was silent. Tiffany's lawyer stammered through a rebuttal, but his words rang hollow. The evidence was a fortress. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was stern. "This court finds no evidence of wrongful termination. The documentation provided demonstrates a consistent pattern of misconduct. The claims of defamation and emotional distress are dismissed. The plaintiff's case is denied in full." The gavel struck. It was over. Tiffany broke. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her tissue crumpled in her fist. Her lawyer muttered excuses, but she shoved him away, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Marcus," she cried, turning to him. "Please, say something. Defend me. Tell them I'm not a monster." The room held its breath. Marcus stood slowly, his face ashen. He looked at me, then at her. "I can't," he whispered. The words shattered her. She screamed, clutching at him, but he pulled away. "Don't you see, Tiffany? You humiliated my mother at my father's funeral. You lied to me about everything. I loved you, but I don't even know who you are anymore." Her sobs echoed through the courtroom as Marcus walked past her without another glance. He paused at my side, his eyes red. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm sorry." For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a deep breath. The message lingered on my phone screen like a stain. "You haven't seen the last." 5 words, no name, no context. But I didn't need context. I knew exactly whose voice was behind them. Tiffany Albright. The weeks following the trial should have been peaceful. My reputation restored. My empire secure. My son finally free from the blindness that had chained him. But peace never lasts when bitterness festers. Tiffany had lost everything: her job, her lawsuit, her credibility, and most painfully, her husband. Marcus had filed for divorce, quietly but firmly, handing her the papers she had once thought she'd never see. Yet, instead of retreating, Tiffany simmered. Like a flame deprived of air, she grew smaller but hotter, desperate to scorch anything within reach. One evening, Estelle came into my office holding a thin envelope. "Ma'am, this arrived today. No return address." I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photo, me at Elias's grave, head bowed, unaware of the camera. On the back, scrawled in uneven ink, were the words, "Even queens can fall." Estella's jaw tightened. "She's stalking you." I exhaled slowly, my hands steady even as my chest tightened. "She's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Do you want me to involve the police?" "Not yet," I said. "She still thinks she has power. Let her believe it a little longer. The more rope she has, the harder the fall." But the real test came when Marcus knocked on my door late one night, his face pale. "She showed up at my apartment," he whispered. "She was waiting outside, said she wanted one last chance." "And what did you say?" I asked. His eyes brimmed with pain. "I told her it was over, that I can't live in lies anymore. But she begged, Mom. She cried like I've never seen her cry. And for a moment, I almost believed her." I took his hand. "Marcus, compassion is noble, but do not mistake her tears for transformation. She's mourning her power, not her behavior." He nodded slowly, but doubt still clouded his eyes. Days later, I found myself at Elias's grave, the city's noise hushed in the cemetery's silence. The autumn leaves had turned crimson, scattered across the grass like spilled wine. I touched the headstone gently. "Elias," I whispered, "I've defended myself, just as you told me. But I wonder how much further must this go? How many battles must be fought before peace is real?" The wind answered only with silence. Behind me, I thought I heard a twig snap. I turned quickly, nothing but shadows and trees, but unease prickled my skin. I wasn't alone. The following week, Tiffany made her move. A glossy blog post appeared online, shared across social media. The truth about Margaret Coleman, a fraud in pearls. It painted me as a manipulator, a tyrant, a woman who destroyed her own family for control. Photos of me entering the courthouse, grainy shots of my apartment, even accusations about Belle, my daughter, a teacher who had nothing to do with Tiffany's downfall. The comment section burned with divided voices. Some defended me fiercely, others delighted in the scandal. I read the article calmly, sipping Bordeaux. Estelle paced in fury. "We can sue her for defamation. We can have the site shut down." "No," I said quietly. "Let her scream. Lies make noise, but truth endures." "But ma'am," I set my glass down. "Estelle, the louder she shouts, the more obvious her desperation becomes, and every word she writes digs her own grave." Then came the call I didn't expect. "Belle." "Mom, she showed up at my school," she said, her voice trembling. "She tried to talk to me in the parking lot, said she wanted me to convince Marcus to forgive her. I walked away, but the children saw, my colleagues saw. It was humiliating. Rage boiled in my chest, hotter than anything I'd felt in weeks. Tiffany could attack me, but dragging my daughter into this? That crossed a line. That night I called my lawyer. File for a restraining order. Immediately. The court granted it within days. Tiffany was barred from approaching me, Marcus or Belle, but I knew paper alone couldn't stop venom. And then, just as suddenly as she had stormed into our lives, Tiffany vanished. No blog posts, no appearances, no late-night messages. Weeks passed. Silence. Marcus moved into a small apartment near the boutique, where he now worked at the bottom rung, just as I'd required. He wore the sales associate uniform, folded dresses, and treated every client with dignity. For the first time, I saw my son grow into the man Elias and I had hoped he'd become. Belle thrived in her classroom, her foundation for underprivileged children finally underway with funds I had entrusted to her. Life returned to rhythm. Almost. One cold evening in December, I stayed late at the office, reviewing quarterly reports. The building was quiet, emptied of staff. As I prepared to leave, I noticed an envelope slipped under my door. No address, no handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Thank you for teaching me. I was blind, I see now." No signature, but I knew. "Tiffany." I sat in silence, the letter trembling in my hand. Was it real remorse, or another manipulation? Perhaps it didn't matter. For the first time, I felt the weight lift, not because Tiffany was gone, but because she no longer mattered. Her power over me had ended the moment I chose dignity over silence. The next day, I returned to the boutique, walking its polished floors. Customers laughed, employees moved gracefully, Chloe assisted a woman with patience and care. This was the empire Elias and I had built not on arrogance, but on respect. As I watched, Marcus appeared, adjusting a rack of scarves. He looked up, caught my eye and smiled, a genuine smile, free from Tiffany's shadow. I felt Elias's presence then, not in voice, but in certainty. We had done it. We had defended not just wealth, but values.